Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Mary Jo, and thanks, Jessica, for those presentations. We're going to throw it open to questions. Peter, if you can unmute the gallery, and anybody who has a question, feel free to weigh in for any of our panelists.
This is Mark.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, this is Mark Gruenberg from Press Associates Union News Service, and I guess my question is for anybody who wants to answer it. But first of all, to Jessica, you made a point that a huge proportion of workers who are killed on the job and killed unnecessarily on the job are older workers, those over 55. Go into that a little. Why are those workers in particular at greater risk? And anybody else wants to chime in on that? I noticed the temp worker was 58. So go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so again, something we mentioned earlier is that this data has just been released, and these are some of the trends that we've seen based on release data last week. Again, the numbers that we presented show an increase since the census of fatal occupational injuries began in 1992. Now, an increase in older workers gives us a take that they are in more vulnerable positions. The reason for that is not quite clear, and that's where we're requesting more studies be done. One of the things that National COSH has done is that we've begun the worker fatality database, which is a way for us to get a little bit more information on some of the fatalities. The current data out there is not sufficient, does not give us enough detail to figure out these trends. Now, the recommendations that we provide in terms of some of the preventative measures to decrease worker fatalities are some of the first-hand experience we have had in our role as educators, advocates for workers, and talking to workers directly at the workplace, which is workers need more training, employers need to follow more standards. There needs to be more worker programs that include their participation and not necessarily one-sided management behavioral-based programs. So I wish I had a clear answer as to the reason why it's the older, it's older individuals. But again, what we need is more information.
Thanks, Jessica. Any other questions for today? And I should say, and if anyone has a question, please break in. Our website is koshnetwork.org, and you can find the worker fatality database that Jessica mentioned there, and allows you to sort different events by age of the workers and other information. And you'll also find a full copy of the report there, and the infographics and other material.
Okay. I've got a second question if Jessica wants to tackle it.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess the best way of putting it is Don Blankenship the rule or the exception when it comes to employers?
Well, unfortunately, it's something we know happens often. Don Blankenship is not the exception. We know that these are trends that happen a lot. It just happens to be a high-profile case, one that we got more information. But we know that there needs to be more employers, to be honest, that don't care, and we are should be seeking criminal prosecution. So, to some extent, it is really a rule in some workplaces. Not to say that every employer is a bad employer, not at all. That's not our position. But we know that there are those employers who really have no regard for worker health and safety and have ignored safety protocols, have ignored the importance of implementing safety programs. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Do we have any other questions for our panelists?
Hi, this is Kelly Habor at the Star Ledger in New Jersey. You note that the fatalities for temp workers went up last year. Any ideas why those went up and whether OSHA's attempts to put a focus on the safety of temp workers has had any effect on fatalities nationwide?
So one thing National COSH has been doing, thank you for asking that, because National COSH has taken a lead in working closely with temp workers, with organizations and some of our COSH groups that are mobilizing temp workers to demand safer workplaces. Now, there is an increase. One trend that we have picked up is that there is an increase in temp worker fatalities due to the reality of our economy, that there are more temp jobs now in the country. It's becoming something, it's becoming more common than your stable, permanent job, full-time job. Now, this could be a reason for the increase in fatalities. Now, in terms of OSHA having been more involved, we have taken a very proactive role in setting some recommendations to OSHA on better protections for temp workers. Now, federal OSHA is completely behind our recommendations in doing what they can and within the resources and means that they have to protect temp workers. But the reality is that we need more regional focus, more local focus, more state plans to help enforce and protect temp workers and really track down temp agencies and allow for dual employer accountability when protecting temp workers. So it gets a little tricky who is really accountable, and what we're saying is that essentially both the host employer and the temp agency have a responsibility to protect, to have safe workplaces for wherever they send temp workers.
Thanks, Jessica. Any other questions for our panelists? No. The floor is open. And again, all the materials that we presented today are on koshnetwork.org. The complete report, we have a infographics that you can download and use if you'd like. We'll also have in a day or so a recording of today's call. Again, if anyone has a question for the panelists, please let us know. If there are no questions, I'll go one more time. Any questions for the panelists? I'd like to thank everyone very much. Oh, go ahead.
Jeremy Bernstein here from Inside OSHA. Jessica just mentioned recommendations for OSHA on temp workers. Are those available somewhere?
Those are available on our website as well. If there is a section on temp worker advocacy that includes a copy of the recommendations, which, by the way, I'd like to note that it's recommendations put together in a collaborative, with a collaborative group that includes other individuals, including the National Staffing Workers Alliance, other local COSH groups, and the Occupational Health and Safety section of APHA members. So you can find that on our website as well.
And Jeremy, I'll save you the trouble of rooting around. I'll send you the link to that and when we get off the call, so you have that directly.
Great, thanks a lot.
It's on there, but there's a lot of stuff on that website, so it's not so easy to pop up every topic right away. And sometimes the search function works just great, but I'll make it easy for you. Any other questions for our panelists? We're happy to take them if you've got them. Do I hear another question coming up there? Okay, again, all these materials will be available on koshnetwork.org. We will have a recording of the call. We have the full report. We have the infographics, which, again, you are free to use and republish if you like. We'd appreciate a credit to National COSH. I want to thank Mary Jo and thank Scott very much for joining us. If you have follow-up inquiries, you can send them to me, Roger, at nationalcosh.org, or to David Isaacson at david@nationalcosh.org. And I want to thank everyone very much for joining us today. And unless there are any other questions, this concludes our call for this afternoon. Thanks everyone very much for participating.